I think that I've now, at 63 years old, suddenly owned that it's not a bad thing to speak your mind and be who you want to be.
Dawn had barely broken over Montecito when Meghan Markle's world began to unravel. By 6 a.m., her phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls, frantic texts, hundreds of alerts from publicists and lawyers operating in full emergency mode. This wasn't another tabloid rumor or conveniently leaked photograph. This was something far more dangerous: authentic footage. The woman behind this explosive revelation? Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, the flame-haired royal once married to Prince Andrew, now transforming Buckingham Palace's carefully guarded secrets into Meghan's living nightmare. The footage itself was grainy yet unmistakable. A younger Meghan, champagne glass in hand, laughing aboard a pristine white yacht off the Ibiza coast, surrounded by the glittering elite who believed cameras would never find them. But they just had. Within minutes, #Fergie footage dominated social media. The 30-second clip ricocheted across TikTok and Twitter as millions watched in real time. News anchors scrambled to verify its authenticity, but the internet had already rendered its verdict. "There she is, our Duchess of Dignity, back in her yacht days," one post sneered. "So much for privacy and principles." By breakfast, Meghan's meticulously crafted image, the humanitarian, the feminist, the global advocate, was disintegrating before her eyes. The footage clashed violently with the polished narrative she'd spent years constructing, from her royal wedding to her Oprah interview to her endless proclamations about authenticity and truth. Now there she was, carefree in designer bikini on a billionaire's yacht. Decades-old footage reborn as a 4K scandal.
But I wonder, she'd probably be funnier. No, I think I'd be funnier. And, her boys are really special boys.
Fergie never directly accused Meghan of anything. She simply described an era, a social scene she and Andrew once inhabited. She never mentioned Meghan by name. She didn't need to. The internet connected the dots faster than any tabloid headline could. Inside their Montecito mansion, sources say Meghan collapsed. She was trembling, one insider revealed. She couldn't comprehend it was real, that Fergie, of all people, had orchestrated this. Yet, in a twisted way, the revelation made perfect sense. Fergie had always been the unspoken embodiment of royal scandal, the cautionary tale. Once beloved by the Queen, then exiled by the firm after her own infamous photographs surfaced in the 90s, she understood the sting of tabloid humiliation better than anyone. So why now? Why Meghan? Royal observers believe they know. Fergie, who'd remained largely neutral throughout the Harry-Meghan saga, had reportedly grown weary of Meghan's subtle criticisms of the royal family, particularly her claims about receiving no support during her early royal days. Sarah felt Meghan was rewriting history. A palace insider told reporters she despised the hypocrisy of portraying oneself as a victim while simultaneously capitalizing on royal privilege. The footage was her way of declaring, "You're not the only one with a complicated past."
On Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's former home, Frogmore Cottage.
By mid-morning, Meghan's team had entered full crisis mode. Her PR chief, visibly panicked, ordered an immediate social media freeze. Lawyers drafted cease and desist letters, but the genie had already escaped the bottle, the footage spreading faster than wildfire. Meanwhile, British morning shows reveled in the scandal. One commentator quipped, "Looks like the Duchess's private era featured quite a few public parties." Royal analysts dissected every frame, cross-referencing timestamps with archived paparazzi photos. The consensus? It was authentic. Then came the devastating blow, a statement from Fergie herself. Delivered through her spokesperson, the message arrived crisp, cutting, and laced with signature Ferguson edge. Everyone has a past, but when one profits from moral superiority, honesty becomes fair game. That single line detonated across the media landscape like a bomb. The implication was unmistakable. Meghan, who'd spent years preaching transparency and truth, had been concealing her own secrets.
By lunchtime, Hollywood whispered nervously. Producers, agents, and streaming executives reportedly convened emergency meetings. Would this scandal jeopardize Meghan's multi-million-dollar deals? Could her inspirational Duchess brand survive such a hit? She's marketable as long as she's aspirational, but this footage makes her look like everyone else, ambitious, calculating, messy. The mystique is gone.
Former Duke and Duchess of York were told to vacate Windsor's royal lodge. A source close to the ex-royal told People that Sarah is going to be moving out and into a separate...
Back in Montecito, Harry was reportedly furious, but not at Fergie. He told her this was the cost of fame, claimed a source close to the Sussexes. He pleaded with her to remain calm, to let the storm pass. But Meghan couldn't. She felt betrayed, humiliated, cornered. The couple allegedly argued deep into the night, their voices echoing through the sprawling mansion. Staff described hearing doors slam, witnessing Meghan pace the hallways, phone clutched in hand, furiously dictating responses and demanding her lawyers take action. Even Meghan's fiercest defenders struggled to spin this revelation. "She's human," one PR ally told Variety. "She was young. We all have wild moments in our 20s. Except this wasn't a random influencer. This was a duchess. A woman who'd built her entire post-royal identity on integrity, mindfulness, and moral authority. And now the internet had watched her party like a tabloid headline come to life. The damage was measurable immediately. Within 24 hours, her foundation's Instagram hemorrhaged over 200,000 followers. Brand partnerships initiated reviews of their affiliations. A charity ambassador deal reportedly in development with a luxury wellness company abruptly dissolved.
And King Charles has very much been dragged into this. The king has been heckled.
Behind palace walls, sources claimed the reaction was icy, yet unsurprised. The institution doesn't forgive easily, a senior royal aide observed, and Meghan has accumulated plenty of adversaries along her journey. Fergie's move may have been personal, but the timing carried poetic justice. Indeed, insiders suggested Buckingham Palace had known about the footage for years, but chose discretion. After all, the royals had always operated under an unspoken rule of mutually assured destruction. Everyone harbored secrets, everyone possessed damaging information. But once Meghan began attacking the firm publicly, questioning their values, their compassion, their integrity, that quiet courtesy evaporated. Now, with Fergie's footage in the open, the power dynamic had shifted dramatically. Meghan was no longer the innocent outsider battling an outdated monarchy. She'd become the scandalous former actress with skeletons in her own closet. It's ironic, one British journalist mused on air. The woman who preached about truth is being undone by it. By evening, Montecito felt like a war room. Harry reportedly called his father, a rare conversation that sources described as frosty but civil. King Charles, ever diplomatic, offered no promises, but his message was clear. Handle it quietly. Dignity always wins.
The irony wasn't lost on Meghan. Dignity, the very quality she'd tried to embody, was now slipping through her fingers like sand. As night descended, she sat alone in the garden, scrolling through endless headlines. Yachtgate, Fergie's revenge, Duchess unfiltered. Tears welled as she noticed old friends and former allies remaining conspicuously silent. No one was defending her, not this time. In that still moment, surrounded by California luxury, yet consumed by silence, Meghan Markle, the woman who had conquered Hollywood, married into royalty, and built an empire from exile, realized something devastating. Her past had finally caught up with her, and the crown she'd once walked away from remained powerful enough to destroy her without lifting a single finger.
Happy Easter, sir.
Before the sun could rise again over Montecito, the crisis had evolved. Inside Meghan's California estate, a dozen phones buzzed in synchronized panic. Headlines spread like contagion. Fergie drops yacht footage, Meghan in tears. Publicists scrambled to draft statements. Assistants frantically deleted posts. Lawyers were pulled into emergency calls before breakfast could even be considered. Every second mattered, because the footage, whatever its origin, had already accumulated 5 million views overnight. Shut it down. Contact every outlet. barked her PR chief, pacing barefoot, coffee abandoned on the counter. But it was already too late. The footage, grainy yet unmistakable, showed a younger Duchess laughing on a Mediterranean yacht, surrounded by figures she'd once sworn she barely knew. The atmosphere radiated music, champagne, and a reckless freedom that contradicted the image she'd carefully curated since marrying into royalty.
By sunrise, #Yacht Days had conquered every trending list. Meghan herself had vanished from public view. Her inner circle reported she'd retreated to the library, her sanctuary when the world turned hostile. Curtains drawn, lights dimmed, she stared at her reflection in the darkened window. The woman staring back didn't resemble the Duchess who'd conquered Hollywood and shaken a monarchy. She looked cornered, trapped. The betrayal cut deep. Fergie, Sarah to those who'd known her before the crown, had once been a trusted ally. They'd shared dinners, whispered about palace life, even exchanged thoughtful gifts. But now Sarah's voice echoed everywhere. Podcasts, talk shows, late-night specials, and she wasn't holding back.
Sarah Ferguson publicly apologized for taking abusers' cash and vowed to cut ties with him.
The clip went viral within minutes. Back at Montecito, the Duchess's team watched in stunned silence. Each new headline struck like a hammer blow. Fergie exposes Duchess's past. Royal rift deepens. Palace insiders, she's finished. Her American publicist, typically cool under pressure, appeared visibly shaken. If we don't control this narrative now, she warned, they'll define her forever. The Duchess finally spoke, her voice low and steady, yet trembling at the edges. Then we redefine it first. Within hours, the machine roared to life. The crisis team drafted a 48-hour media strategy, exclusive interviews, carefully leaked behind-the-scenes photographs, and an emotional statement prepared for her lifestyle website. Every move calculated, every word tested. Yet even as her camp mobilized forces, a colder, quieter battle was already unfolding across the Atlantic. Inside Buckingham Palace, senior courtiers gathered in chambers where strategy was discussed behind locked doors, and centuries-old portraits seemed to listen in watchful silence. "Fergie has accomplished what we never could," murmured one advisor. "The Duchess's image is fracturing on its own." The royal secretary nodded slowly. "Then let the public witness it unfold. We need not interfere, only amplify." Across the table, a communications officer opened a folder marked Project Restoration. Inside lay headlines, press timelines, and potential talking points for the royal family's next public engagement. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Reclaim the narrative without ever naming names. Highlight dignity, heritage, continuity. The officer instructed. No direct comment, no acknowledgement, but the contrast will speak volumes. And so, while the Duchess's team battled online, the palace played chess. Within 24 hours, the heir and his wife appeared at a London charity gala, radiant, composed, effortlessly regal. Paparazzi photographs of the couple smiling beneath crystal chandeliers were immediately juxtaposed with clips of the Duchess's tearful reaction. Public sympathy began to shift. Even the press that once adored her started to turn. She built her empire on transparency, one columnist wrote, yet she's never looked so guarded. Back in California, the Duchess watched that clip in solitude. Tears streamed down her face. Not the rehearsed kind cameras used to love, but genuine ones. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain about who remained on her side. Her phone buzzed with a message from her husband, away on business overseas. Don't respond yet. Let it blow over. But she couldn't. Let it blow over? She whispered to the empty room. She's rewriting my entire story. That night, her team released the statement. It was heartfelt, defensive, perfectly worded. Too perfect, some critics observed.
She claimed the footage was misconstrued, that it captured a private moment from long before marriage, and that the renewed attention reflected a disturbing pattern of women being torn down for daring to evolve. The hashtags shifted again. Hashtag stand with the Duchess, hashtag media misogyny. But the damage had crystallized. Even supporters whispered doubts. Even allies remained silent.
If I was talking Gen Z, I'd say slay.
Somewhere in London, within the calm stone walls of Buckingham Palace, a single memo landed on the Queen Regent's desk. Subject: Public Sentiment Update. The summary was brief yet telling. The Duchess is losing control of her narrative. Recommendation: maintain silence, let events run their course. For once, the monarchy didn't need to engage in battle. The storm was destroying itself from within. By the third morning, Meghan had stopped hiding. The tears had evaporated. The fear had transformed. What remained was fire. Raw, unfiltered, dangerous. Enough, she told her team as they gathered in the sunlit drawing room that now felt more like a war room. We're not waiting for this to blow over. We're going to flip it. Her publicist hesitated. Flip what exactly? The story. What followed was something only the Duchess could orchestrate. Part performance, part confession, part revenge. She would film her own special. No network, no interviewer, no filter. Just her, a camera, and the truth. Whatever version of it she decided to tell. Cameras were rushed in that afternoon. A stylist smoothed her hair into soft waves. The room was stripped of its usual glamour. No lavish set pieces, no designer gowns. The Duchess wanted vulnerability to become her armor.
But don't try and trick me now, because I'm not going to play this game. Delete that bit. John, can you just delete it, please, that bit? Because I don't want to go.
She began speaking before the crew even called action. "I've made mistakes," she said, her voice trembling with carefully rehearsed fragility. "But the thing about women like me is we're never allowed to move forward. Every chapter from our past is weaponized against us." She paused deliberately. "And sometimes by people we once trusted." Those words, carefully planted, would land like thunder hours later.
Because while the Duchess filmed her confession, an entirely different storm was building across the Atlantic. A mid-level producer from a London media house had gone rogue. Claiming moral duty, he leaked the metadata from the yacht footage to a journalist at the Chronicle. The data revealed timestamps, file origins, and one very familiar device ID. The footage hadn't come from archives, as Fergie implied. It had been copied from her own cloud account, accidentally uploaded years ago. The revelation hit the newsroom like dynamite.
Within hours, the Chronicle published a follow-up piece. Exclusive. New evidence suggests Fergie was source of leaked footage. Suddenly, the public tide reversed. Clips of Fergie's polished interviews now appeared performative. Her moral outrage seemed self-serving. Commentators began asking the question everyone else had been too polite to voice. Had she leaked the footage herself for relevance? When her publicist called to warn her, Fergie reportedly went silent. Then, with the composure of someone long practiced in crisis control, she whispered, "They've turned the board. I underestimated her."
One thing you couldn't live without.
My passport.
Do you have a middle name?
Yes, it's Meghan. My first name is actually Rachel.
Meanwhile, the Duchess's team leaned into the momentum. Her truth-telling video went live that night, a cinematic blend of confession and defiance. The lighting was soft, the music hauntingly sparse. "I forgive," she declared, "because holding grudges only poisons your own peace. But I will never stop standing up for myself. Not as a duchess, as a woman." It was manipulative, it was brilliant, and it worked. The next morning, clips of her speech dominated every feed. #HerTruth trended globally. Celebrities reposted snippets with captions like, "So powerful." Talk shows debated her raw honesty, and the same tabloids that had crucified her days earlier now praised her resilience. But inside Belmer Palace, the Queen Regent's advisors were less impressed. Effective, yes, but unstable. The more she talks, the less she seems royal.
Yet one member of the royal inner circle wasn't so certain. Prince Alaric, the heir's younger cousin, and once a quiet ally to the Duchess, had begun asking his own questions. He'd witnessed the fallout firsthand. He understood the cost of silence. So when an anonymous email landed in his inbox containing copies of the metadata report and a brief message, "You deserve to know who started this," he acted. That weekend, Alaric arranged a discreet meeting at a London hotel. The journalist who'd verified the footage's origin was waiting.
The details were damning. The file trail didn't just implicate Fergie, it also pointed to a third party, someone inside the Duchess's own early PR network who had traded access for a favor years ago. It wasn't merely betrayal. It was sabotage that had begun long before the current scandal. By the time the Duchess learned of this twist, she was halfway through a live appearance on an American morning show. A producer slipped her a phone mid-segment. She read the message, blinked once, then smiled directly into the camera. "I think the truth," she said calmly, "has a way of revealing itself, even when others try to hide it."
It looks like the skeletons are coming out of the closet for Meghan Markle, whether she likes it or not.
No one watching knew what she'd just seen, but everyone felt the shift. The Duchess had transformed from defensive to dangerous. An hour later, she posted a single cryptic message on her social feed. The footage came from closer than anyone thinks. It was the perfect teaser, just vague enough to ignite speculation, just sharp enough to warn her enemies. Fergie, blindsided by the metadata revelation, now found herself as the hunted one. Talk shows withdrew invitations, brand partners paused contracts, even her publishers delayed her upcoming memoir. Within days, she issued a statement of her own, denying she'd ever leaked the footage intentionally. But the damage was done. The internet had already chosen its villain. And as her reputation crumbled, the Duchess seized the moment. She announced a new documentary, produced naturally by her own media company, about truth, forgiveness, and the power of owning your story. Behind the scenes, palace aides rolled their eyes. A production disguised as penance, one quipped. But they also knew something else. The Duchess had turned near disaster into opportunity. For now. Because in this kingdom, whether real or Hollywood-made, public redemption was fleeting, and private consequences never stayed buried for long. The premiere arrived like a storm wrapped in velvet. Floodlights washed the Los Angeles skyline. Camera flashes crackled like lightning. Meghan stepped onto the crimson carpet wrapped in gold silk, deliberate, defiant, dazzling. Every inch of her shimmered with control. Behind her, banners for the new documentary filled the air. Her story, her truth, her power. Inside, hundreds of guests, influencers, producers, reporters, whispered about the scandal that had created the very film they were about to watch. It wasn't a confession. It was a coronation. The opening scene stunned the crowd. Slow-motion footage of crashing waves and her voice echoing over them. Every woman has a tide to fight. Sometimes the world forgets that even royalty can drown. By the time the credits rolled, the audience rose in thunderous applause. The Duchess smiled faintly. Victory. At least for tonight. Her team exhaled as though surfacing from deep water. They'd done it. They had transformed chaos into narrative, scandal into art. But across the Atlantic, inside the limestone walls of Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was far colder. In the dim briefing room, the king watched a private screener of the same film. Around him sat 3 senior advisors, notebooks open, faces unreadable. "It's masterful," one admitted. "Manipulative," another countered. The king only murmured, "Both can be true." Then he gave a small nod. "Prepare a response. Not a statement, a gesture." By dawn, London's press office received quiet instructions. Within 48 hours, the palace announced a new initiative, the Fellowship, a program supporting young filmmakers documenting community stories across the Commonwealth. The tagline, authenticity and action. No one mentioned the Duchess. No one needed to. The contrast was clear. Her glossy, self-authored spectacle versus the palace's sober commitment to others. The move landed perfectly. Commentators called it a masterclass in silent rebuke. For every headline praising her comeback, 2 more dissected the palace's poise. Back in California, the Duchess noticed. She always did. As she scanned the morning coverage, her victory began to feel strangely hollow. The applause had faded, replaced by clinical analysis. Pundits debated whether her new image represented liberation or manipulation. The same feeds that had once cheered now turned cold. The Duchess sells pain like perfume, beautifully packaged, faintly synthetic. Her husband, still overseas, sent a brief message. "Proud of you. Stay grounded." Grounded? The word stung more than he'd intended. That afternoon, she retreated again to the library, the same room where the crisis had begun. On the desk lay a single, unmarked envelope. Her assistant swore it hadn't been there an hour earlier. Inside, a printed still from the leaked yacht footage, and beneath it, a handwritten note. "Every crown comes with a cost. S." Her heart skipped. The signature was unmistakable. Fergie. For weeks, she'd been told Fergie had gone silent, withdrawn from public life. But now, the letter proved otherwise. Not contrition, but a reminder. The older woman had played her own long game. Somewhere, somehow, she still held a piece of the story. The Duchess felt the adrenaline return, that familiar cocktail of fear and excitement. She wasn't done. Neither was Fergie. Hours later, the story took another twist. A London magazine published an anonymous exposé claiming the Duchess's documentary had quietly used footage licensed from a private royal archive without permission. The implication was devastating, that she'd broken the very rules she accused others of exploiting. Her legal team denied it immediately, but whispers grew louder. Was this the palace's countermove? Or had Fergie once again outmaneuvered her? The truth emerged in fragments. A former archivist, pressured by reporters, revealed that months earlier, someone with palace credentials had granted the Duchess's producers limited access to vintage material, a courtesy meant for research only. That footage had somehow found its way into the final cut.
The revelation hit both sides like a stray bullet. The Duchess's project now carried a faint scent of scandal again, while the palace was accused of leaking internal permissions to discredit her. Each camp denied involvement. Each pointed silently at the other. By week's end, the world was right back where it had started, divided, enthralled, addicted to the spectacle. And yet something had shifted underneath it all. Late one night, in the glow of her courtyard lanterns, the Duchess stood alone and watched the press vans fade from her gates. She realized that the war for image had no finish line. Every victory demanded a new defense. Every redemption required another confession. Across the ocean, the Queen Regent walked to the palace garden with Fergie, who had returned discreetly from the shadows. Their conversation was quiet, but one line carried on the wind. You both wanted to control the story, the Queen said softly. You both forgot that history belongs to no one. Fergie smiled, eyes tired but satisfied, then let history do the editing. Weeks later, a rumor began to circulate. Not in tabloids this time, but among producers and diplomats. The Duchess had quietly stepped away from her entertainment company. She'd turned down talk show offers. She was traveling again. Not to Hollywood or New York, but to Geneva, Nairobi, Singapore. A leaked itinerary hinted at meetings with NGOs, cultural envoys, even a tech philanthropist known for global campaigns on ethics and digital truth. No one could confirm it. No one could stop speculating. The final image came from a single paparazzi shot. The Duchess boarding a plane at dusk. No entourage, no diamonds, just a leather bag and a determined stare. Caption, "The Duchess departs, a new beginning." Some called it exile, others evolution. But those who had followed her story from the start recognized the look in her eyes, the same look she'd worn on that fateful yacht years ago. A woman about to rewrite the narrative again. Because in this world of crowns and cameras, truth isn't found. It's manufactured, managed, and mastered until someone else leaks the next chapter.